Jessica seemed elated by the attention and his friend quickly joined us. But as I tried to listen to their easy chatter, I was terribly uncomfortable, waiting nervously for the moment he would arrive. I hoped that he would simply ignore me when he came and prove my suspicions false. He didn't come, and as time passed, I grew more and more tense. I walked to biology with more confidence when, by the end of lunch, he still hadn't showed. My goooo was taking on the qualities of a golden retriever, walked faithfully by my side to class. I held my breath at the door, but Edward Cullen wasn't there either. I exhaled and went to my seat. Mike followed, talking about an upcoming trip to the beach. He lingered by my desk till the bell rang. Then he smiled at me wistfully and went to sit by a girl with braces and a bad perm. It looked like I was going to have to do something about Mike, and it wouldn't be easy. In a town like this, where people lived on top of everyone else, diplomacy was essential. I had never been enormously tactful. I had no practice dealing with overly friendly boys. I was relieved that I had the desk to myself that Edward was absent. I told myself that repeatedly, but I couldn't get rid of the nagging suspicion that I was the reason he wasn't there. It was ridiculous and egotistical to think that I could affect anyone that strongly. It was impossible, and yet I couldn't stop worrying that it was true. When the school day was finally done and the blush was fading out of my cheeks from the volleyball incident, I changed quickly back into my jeans and navy blue sweater. I hurried from the girls' locker room, pleased to find that I successfully evaded my retriever friend for a moment. I walked swiftly out to the parking lot. It was crowded now with fleeing students. I got in my truck and dug through my bag to make sure I had what I needed. Last night I discovered that Charlie couldn't cook much besides fried eggs and bacon, so I requested that I be assigned kitchen detail for the duration of the stay. He was willing enough to hand over the keys to the banquet hall. I also found out that he had no food in the house, so I had my shopping list and the cash from the jar and cupboard labeled food money, and I was on my way to the Thriftway. Thriftway? What is that? Is that a grocery store? I gunned my deafening engine to life, ignoring the heads that turned in my direction and backed carefully into a place in the life of cars that was waiting to exit a parking lot. As I waited, trying to pretend that the ear-splitting rumbling was coming from someone else's car, I saw the two Cullens and the Hale twins getting into their car. It was the shiny new Volvo, of course. I hadn't noticed their clothes before. I'd been too mesmerized by their faces. Now that I looked, it was obvious that they were all dressed exceptionally well. Simply put in clothes and subtly hinted at designer origins. With the remarkable good looks and style with which they carried themselves, they could have worn dress rags and pulled it off. It seemed excessive for them to have both looks and money, but as far as I could tell, life worked that way most of the time. It didn't look as if it bought them any acceptance here. No, I didn't fully believe that. The insulation must be their desire. I couldn't imagine any door that wouldn't be opened by that degree of beauty. How sad is that? So true though. They looked at my nosy truck as I passed them. Just like everyone else, I kept my eyes straight forward and was relieved when I finally was free of the school grounds. The Thriftway was not far from school, just a few streets south of the highway. It was nice to be inside the supermarket. It felt normal. I did the shopping at home, and I fell into the pattern of a familiar task gladly. The store was big enough inside that I could hear the tapping of the rain on the roof to remind me where I was. When I got home, I unloaded all the groceries and stuffed them in wherever I could find an open space. I hoped Charlie wouldn't mind. I wrapped potatoes in foil and stuck them in an oven to bake, covered a steak in marinade, and balanced it on top of a carton of eggs on the fridge. When I was finished with that, I took my book bag upstairs. Before starting my homework, I changed into a pair of dry sweatpants, pulled my damp hair into a ponytail, and checked my email for the first time. I had 3 messages. Bella, my mom wrote, "Write me as soon as you get in. Tell me how your flight was. Is it raining? I miss you already. I'm almost finished packing for Florida, but I can't find my pink blouse. Do you know where I put it? Phil says hi. Mom." I sighed and went to the next. It was 8 hours after the first. "Bella," she wrote, "why haven't you emailed yet? What are you waiting for? Mom." Oh God. The last was from this morning. "Isabella, first snowfall of the new year. I kept my mouth shut. Sure, it was drier than rain until it melted in your socks. I walked alertedly to the cafeteria with Jessica after Spanish. Most balls were flying everywhere. I kept a binder in my hands, ready to use it as a shield if necessary. Jessica thought I was hilarious, but something in my expression kept her from lobbing a snowball at me herself. Mike got up to us as we walked to the doors, laughing with ice melting the spikes in his hair. He and Jessica were talking animatedly about the snow fight as we got to line to buy food. I glanced toward the corner table out of habit, and then I froze where I stood. There were 5 people at the table. Jessica pulled my arm. "Hello, Bella. What do you want?" I looked down. My ears were hot. I had no reason to feel self-conscious. I reminded myself I hadn't done anything wrong. "What's with Bella?" Mike asked Jessica. "Nothing," Al answered. "I'll just get a soda today." I got up at the end of the line. "Aren't you hungry?" Jessica asked. "Actually, I feel a little sick," I said, my eyes still on the floor. I waited for them to get their food and then followed them to a table, my eyes on my feet. I sipped my soda slowly, my stomach churning. Twice, Mark asked, with unnecessary concern, how I was feeling. I told him it was nothing, but I was wondering if I should play it up and escape to the nurse's office for the next hour. Ridiculous. I shouldn't have to run away. I decided to permit myself one glance at the Cullen family table. If he was glaring at me, I would skip biology like the coward I was. I kept my head down and glanced under my lashes. None of them were looking this way. I lifted my head a little. They were laughing. Edward, Jasper, and Emmett all had their hair entirely saturated with melting snow. Alice and Rosalie were leaning away as Emmett shook his dripping hair toward them. They were enjoying the snowy day, just like everyone else, only they looked more a scene from a movie than the rest of us. But aside from the laughter and playfulness, there was something different. I couldn't quite pinpoint what the difference was. I examined Edward the most carefully. His skin was less pale, I decided. Flush from the snow fight, maybe. The circles around his eyes, much less noticeable. But there was something more. I pondered, staring, trying to isolate the change. "Bella, what are you staring at?" Jessica intruded, her eyes following my stare. At that precise moment, his eyes flashed over to meet mine. I dropped my head, letting my hair fall to conceal my face. I was sure, though, in an instant our eyes met, that he didn't look harsh or unfriendly, as he had the last time. He looked merely curious again, unsatisfied in some way. "Edward Cullen is staring at you." Jessica giggled in my ear. "He doesn't look angry, does he?" I couldn't help asking. "No," she said, sounded confused by my question. "Should he be?" "I don't think he likes me," I confided. I still felt queasy. I put my head down on my arm. "The Cullens don't like anybody. Well, they don't notice anybody enough to like them, but he's still staring at you." "Stop looking at him," I hissed. She snickered, but she looked away. I raised my head enough to make sure that she did, contemplating violence if she resisted. Mike interrupted us then. He was planning an epic battle of the blizzards in the parking lot after school and wanted us to join. Jessica agreed enthusiastically. The way she looked at Mike left little doubt that she would be up for anything he suggested. I kept silent. I would have to hide in the gym until the parking lot cleared. For the rest of the lunch hour, I very carefully kept my eyes at my own table. I decided to honor the bargain I'd made with myself. Since he didn't look angry, I would go to biology. My stomach did frightened little flips at the thought of sitting next to him again. I didn't really want to walk to class with Mike, as usual. He seemed to be everyone knows your name. The whole town's been waiting for you to arrive. I grimaced. I knew it was something like that. No, I persisted stupidly. I meant, why did you call me Bella? He seemed confused. Do you prefer Isabella? No,